Brookhaven was a town that could have been pulled straight from a postcard. It was small, suburban, and safe, the kind of place where families left their doors unlocked, and children played outside until dusk without fear. Everyone knew their neighbors. Everyone trusted one another. At the far end of Willow Lane stood a modest two-story home with white siding and faded green shutters. Its owner, James Foster, had lived there for over a decade. James was in his late 40s, soft-spoken, and mild-mannered. Neighbors described him as polite, dependable, and a little lonely but harmless. He kept to himself mostly, but was always ready with a smile and a wave when walking his dog. To the people of Willow Lane, James was just another friendly face. No one could have guessed what secrets lay beneath that ordinary exterior. The night everything changed. On the evening of September 23rd, Brookhaven's peace was shattered. At 9:37 p.m., a frantic 911 call came from James Foster's home. His voice on the recording was shaky and rushed. "Please, you have to send someone. There's blood, my tenant. She's not moving." When officers arrived, they were greeted by a chilling scene. Upstairs in the rented room lived Claire Matthews, a 26-year-old woman who had moved into James's home 6 months earlier. Claire's body was found sprawled across the bedroom floor, stabbed multiple times. A lamp was shattered, dresser drawers had been pulled out and upended, and the back door of the house showed signs of forced entry. At first glance, it looked like a burglary gone horribly wrong. Neighbors watched from their porches as red and blue lights painted the street. Mothers clutched their children closer. Fathers whispered with unease. In Brookhaven, crime was rare, violent crime, nearly unheard of. The victim, Claire Matthews. To understand the case, detectives needed to know who Claire was. Claire grew up 2 towns over, in a working-class family. Friends described her as ambitious, kind, and deeply empathetic. She had dreams of becoming a nurse, and had been working double shifts at a local diner to save money for school. She was fiercely independent. Moving into James's home had been a way to cut costs. He rented out his upstairs room for extra income, and the arrangement seemed safe enough at the time. To her family and friends, Claire appeared happy, though they recalled her sounding stressed in recent weeks. That detail would later prove critical. The first suspect, James Foster himself, was the one who had discovered the body, or so he said. He told officers that he had gone out around 8:30 p.m. to buy groceries. When he returned an hour later, he noticed the back door open. Inside, he claimed, he found the scene and immediately called for help. His story sounded believable enough, and his shock appeared genuine. Neighbors vouched for him, telling detectives he was a good man who had never caused trouble. But there were troubling inconsistencies. First, James's fingerprints weren't just on common household items. They were found all over the murder weapon, the kitchen knife that had killed Claire. James said he picked it up in panic when he found her body. Detectives had heard that excuse before. Second, James didn't seem grief-stricken or horrified. He was calm, almost too calm. He spoke in long, overly detailed explanations, as if rehearsing a script. Detectives took note. The investigation deepens. Within 48 hours, detectives began piecing together the crime. They interviewed neighbors, co-workers, and friends of Claire. What they learned sent shivers through the investigation. Several neighbors admitted that James and Claire argued often. Sometimes it was about rent. She was occasionally late with payments, but other times, the shouting seemed more personal. One tenant who had briefly lived in the same house described James as strange and overly attached to Claire. Another neighbor recalled hearing James's voice through the walls late at night, as though he were having heated conversations with someone who wasn't responding. Then came the most unsettling discovery. Claire had confided to friends in a series of emails that she was increasingly uncomfortable living in James's home. She described him as watchful, and said she sometimes caught him lingering near her door. She wrote she felt like she was constantly being observed. Her last email, sent just 3 days before her death, read, "I have to get out of here. He's making me nervous. I don't feel safe." Suddenly, the image of James as a harmless neighbor began to unravel. The breakthrough evidence. The turning point came when detectives pulled surveillance footage from a nearby gas station. At 9:02 p.m., right in the middle of James's supposed grocery run, he was seen pulling his car into the station's lot. Camera showed him exiting his vehicle with a plastic bag. He tossed it into the dumpster and drove away. Investigators retrieved the bag. Inside, they found a shirt and rubber gloves, both stained with blood. Forensic testing confirmed the blood belonged to Claire Matthews. James's alibi was collapsing. The interrogation. When detectives confronted him with the evidence, James's demeanor shifted. Gone was the calm, neighborly exterior. His voice cracked. His eyes darted. He sweated through his shirt. At first, he maintained his innocence, insisting the bag wasn't his, that someone must have framed him. But the walls were closing in. Detectives laid out the pattern. His fingerprints on the murder weapon. The staged break-in. The gas station footage. Claire's emails about her fear of him. Finally, after 12 hours in the interrogation room, James broke. He confessed not with sorrow, but with bitterness. He admitted that he had developed feelings for Claire. Feelings she didn't return. On the night of the murder, she told him she planned to move out. He said he snapped. He accused her of making him feel unwanted, of using him. His anger boiled over. He grabbed a knife from the kitchen and stabbed her in her room. Then, in a clumsy attempt to cover his tracks, he forced open the back door and ransacked drawers to make it look like a burglary. It was all staged. The case moved quickly to trial. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, and Claire's grieving family filled the benches. Prosecutors painted James as a predator hiding in plain sight. A man who wore the mask of a friendly neighbor while harboring a dangerous obsession. They presented the forensic evidence, the emails, the gas station footage, and James's own confession. The defense argued mental instability. They portrayed James as a lonely, troubled man who lost control in a moment of emotional crisis. But the jury was unmoved. After just 5 hours of deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict: first-degree murder. James Foster was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict did little to heal the wounds left behind. For Claire's family, the loss was unbearable. She had been on the cusp of a new life, saving money for nursing school, dreaming of starting a family of her own. All of it stolen in a single act of violence. For the community of Brookhaven, the shock cut deep. The idea that James Foster, the man who waved from his lawn, who helped shovel snow, who lent out his tools, was capable of murder, shattered their sense of safety. The White House with green shutters remained on Willow Lane for months after James's arrest. But few could look at it without remembering the horror that unfolded inside. It became a grim reminder that sometimes evil doesn't come from strangers lurking in dark alleys. Sometimes it lives right next door. The story of Claire Matthews and James Foster is not just a tale of obsession turned deadly. It is a chilling reminder of how appearances can deceive. The friendly neighbor, the ordinary man, may be hiding secrets darker than anyone imagines. For Brookhaven, the scars will remain for years. And for anyone who lived on Willow Lane, the flashing lights of that September night will forever mark the moment their peaceful neighborhood was exposed to the terrifying truth that you can never truly know the person living next door.